We'll have a very official start today, you know, Max, because normally we don't do that, but we'll have an official start today.
Okay, well, how do you want to officially start?
All right. Well, let's do a quick sync in, and then I'll do the official start after that. All right.
What is your official start going to be though?
Well, just wait. I'll surprise you. I'll surprise you.
Let's give it a whirl then.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Confidently Incorrect podcast. We thought this week we'd change things up, and you know we're often accused of having a lack of diversity on the Confidently Incorrect podcast. So we thought, why not have another white middle class male come on to talk and give his views on it, because we don't have enough of that going on, frankly. So you know, hopefully our listeners will be much more pleased to hear that change. So today we've got Matthew Duckett with us, who's one of my flatmates and a good friend of mine. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself to the dear listenership?
Hi, I'm Matt. As Ewan has said, I'm one of his flatmates. I'm from a little village just south of Oxfordshire. And yeah, yet another white middle class guy to join the fray. Add to the diversity, you know? That'd be great.
Exactly. We're always looking for more diversity. So thank you for joining us today. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about a couple of things, just to give people an idea. So we're talking about today drinking at university, and also one of Max's topics is hip hop and the language that is used in it, particularly around sexism and homophobia. So we'll come on to that a bit later. So
Exactly.
Matt, why don't you introduce, because this was your topic, the drinking at university. Why don't you tell us a little about your thoughts on this?
Sure. So I was walking through university the other day, and they started putting up these sort of posters that saying 44% of students at university binge drink. It hadn't really occurred to me that what we did could be classified as binge drinking. I've always thought of binge drinking as sort of a serious and medical condition that's mostly people sat on their own at home just drinking until they can't drink anymore. But after a bit of research, I think the NHS defines it as more than 6 units of alcohol in a single session, which is about 2 or 3 pints of beer. That is insanely small considering the amount that we drink at university, particularly in single sessions. Yeah, so it shocked me a bit, and I was interested to hear your guys' opinion, and just to sort of delve into the topic a bit more and see what you guys think about how I think mass drinking has become a massive part of the university life and how it's a bit inescapable.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll move on to talk about what it's like at Warwick in a bit, but Max, why don't you tell us a bit first about Cambridge a bit? Because I imagine it's quite similar actually, but why don't you tell us a bit?
Yeah, I think most universities are the same, that, you know, drinking is very pervasive and definitely a part of the culture of university. I think that's the case in Germany, it's the case in the UK, it's the case in Cambridge. It's also definitely the case that things are very concentrated in single sessions. I think in Cambridge maybe it's less common to drink very often, but when you do, you drink very heavily. So for example, the way it works with formals is you go there and everybody would have like a bottle of wine for themselves almost.
Okay.
I think it will be similar to how it is in Warwick, I guess.
So you're saying like a bottle of wine to start things off, or as sort of over?
Yeah, a bottle of wine to start. A bottle of wine is what you would have during the meal, and then you would go out after, probably have a pint or two at like some sort of after party thing, and then go out to the club where you would drink more.
Yeah. So it's just, I think there's a big thing at Warwick with, obviously, as Ewan explained the concept of circling to you. Okay.
No.
So to you and
Circling.
the many listeners, circling at Warwick, because Warwick is a total bubble and the campus itself is in the middle of nowhere, there aren't any bars as such. So people tend to, as a society, get together, or as a group of friends get together and sort of sit in a circle. And they drink purple, which is a mixture of, it's what most people refer to as dark snakebite. So it's Foster's or Carling mixed with Somerbees and blackcurrant, like Ribena or something.
A very high quality drink.
It's awful.
It sounds interesting.
£1.75, which is something I want to talk about as well, is cheap drinks later. Basically what you do is you play a set of drinking games with the society. Each society tends to vary a drinking game and such like, but they're all sort of 4 or 5 of the same drinking games. And you basically get very, very drunk, and it's usually on a Wednesday night, which obviously at most universities is fairly infamous for being the night, which I've never quite understood why
Well,
you do
it's
midweek.
It's Sunday night at Cambridge, so
Oh, really? Is it really?
Well, Wednesdays, I think UK wide is when you have
Sports, right?
Sports.
you have sports games, and then a lot of unis, because of that reason, don't have lectures in the afternoon or even in the morning.
Yeah.
So
another thing with this purple is you don't buy it normally. You don't buy it individually in a pint glass. You'll buy a picture of it.
That's in one of the particular bars on campus.
Oh right, okay.
It's but the thing is, because it's £1.75 and you can get 10% off that with your student card, people tend to buy as much as they can.
Yeah.
And it's got to the point where the university have said, well, you're only allowed to buy 3 at once. Their thing being, you can only it's as many as you can carry.
Yeah.
But it's to basically stop people just buying 10 pints for a tenner, basically.
Yeah, that's
and
insane.
so that it's their way of sort of starting to rein things in.
So I think we should bring a few statistics into this just to like give us a sense of what's going on here. So like I found some statistics which I sent to you, Max, as well, which is basically this report done by the ONS, which is like this UK-based organisation which does a bunch of statistics for stuff in the UK. And this was done quite a while ago. It was a study conducted between 2005 and 2013, but I don't see why much would have changed within that time, but maybe I'm wrong.
2015, did you say?
2013. 2013 is the last is the year it was released. But it's interesting because it records a downward trend in binge drinking.
yeah, a very positive trend in this particular study. Yeah.
Down from 30% of 16 to 24-year-olds binge drinking to less than 20% between
That's
05 and
unexpected.
13.
For sure.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
And also having a lot of a huge increase in people who are teetotal, aka not drinking at all.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that actually. And then also this frequent drinking, which only 1 in 50 16 to 24-year-olds were classified as frequent drinkers, which is more than 5 days of drinking in a week.
Yeah, I think because of the way it is, I think the university system, in terms of club nights and whatnot, promotes that 1 night a week or 2 nights a week.
Yeah.
You get out. You don't drink. The generation perhaps 2 or 3 before us, we used to was go to the pub maybe 2-3 times a week or whatever. And my dad particularly said, yeah, I'd put on my university because I was drinking a lot of beer.
Yeah.
I think that's less of the case for our generation because it's not necessarily going out every night, going out 1 night or 2 nights and just absolutely going for it.
Yeah.
And destroying your body as a result.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think there have been studies done on this, but I don't know if it's healthier to do that or to drink regularly but a lower quantity.
I think it's less healthy. I've seen studies on that.
I must confess, I am not good with my alcohol. I treat my body with total disrespect and have many a story, or have been told many a story of my actions. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me is a lot of... I came from an upbringing of pretty much no alcohol was allowed until I was at 18, legal. And I think therefore finished sixth form, started university, not really used to alcohol, not really used to the culture, and just thinking, yeah, let's go for it. Let's just I'm finally allowed to have a drink. Let's just have this, let's have this, let's have this. It doesn't end well, and it's worrying, really.
So do you think it would have been better if you had been brought up with some introduction into alcohol?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah,
That's really interesting you say that, because we often have this idea in society that all underage drinking is a really bad thing, but you've put your finger on something there which is quite interesting, which is that maybe it isn't. Maybe it's good to have an experience or two before you turn 18, because if it's suppressed like that, you can have this kind of explosion when you do turn 18 to kind of go a bit too wild. And maybe that's a risk for a lot of people, because I know I don't know about Max. Well, I do know about Max a bit, but like at boarding school was when I was introduced to alcohol. I had that first experience when I was probably about 16 years old, where I just sort of went crazy because I thought that I would be different to the other 7 billion humans on this planet, and somehow I was going to be able to take my alcohol. So I decided to drink a lot as well the first time I drank, and that was a mistake.
Yeah, I know exactly. And you sort of get carried away, and you think, oh, finally, I've got the opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which I think is a result of the culture that exists around alcohol that you experience when you're younger. You know, you see it in films and series and everywhere. But I also think it's kind of interesting because it contrasts a lot to how it is in the UK versus where I'm from, which is in Germany. I didn't grow up there, but the culture is very different because you're allowed to buy beer and wine in pubs when you're 16, and you can drink with your parents when you're 14, I believe, in the pub.
I believe technically the law in the UK, I could be wrong here, and this is where I'm going to be confidently incorrect.
Don't worry.
I believe it's from the age of 7 you're allowed to drink alcohol in your own home, provided you don't become intoxicated. But I think that's the reason why I'm so sort of unsure about it is because nobody knows about it, and nobody really acts upon it, I think, really.
I think, like, in your own home, like,
people do.
Parents can do what they want, I guess. And, like, I think my parents would always, they wouldn't encourage me, they would never encourage me to drink alcohol. That would seem very weird. They would never, they would offer me alcohol when I got a little bit older, sort of 15, 16, but never encouraged it. And it would always be, like, less than a glass of wine, like a sip or something like that. So it was never, my real experience with proper drinking was
I think
like school.
Yeah, I think my parents saw that I'd survived being a child, and so now my brother has been slowly led into it, and I think that has helped because he's very much I don't think he's a person who's into particularly heavily drinking. No. He's quite a socialite like myself, but he manages to sort of just think, nah, I'm alright, I don't need to get absolutely blasted.
But will that change when he goes to university?
I don't know. I will be interested to see that, actually.
Yeah, I think it's a big product of your environment.
Oh god, yeah.
Because like at work, like you can't really have you can't interact a lot socially if you don't drink. Like there's like we were talking about, like pop and nights like that. They're not fun if you don't get drunk because they're just kind of a bit.
That is where the problem lies.
Okay.
Because everybody goes, oh, it's not fun. Yeah. And I have a good friend in sailing who, for a short while, she was off alcohol due to skin medication, and she still was there on a night out, having an absolute blast, took a life and soul of the party, completely sober. Yeah, it is this man.
That isn't everybody.
No.
Especially because that's the way you sort of experience that for the first time. You don't know it any differently. You sort of think that's part of the experience, and you'll have trouble, I think, recreating that sober a lot of the time.
I feel you there. But I think there is this mentality that you have to be drunk to have fun.
Yes, that's true.
It really annoys me because Ewan will probably agree with me here. I'm a bit of an old fart. I like a chill evening. I like to go to the pub. I'm quite happy to just keep it chill, but have a few drinks. And I think a lot of my other friends who I lived with last year got a bit intimidated by that because for them, they haven't got the sort of, this sounds a bit mean, some necessarily haven't got the social depth or social confidence to be able to just carry off an evening on 1 or 2 beers. Yeah. And I think people go, oh God, I don't really know this person very well. Oh, I know, let's all get really, really drunk. Mm-hmm. And it'll...
Yeah, it's easier, isn't it?
It facilitates.
It facilitates, and the whole culture around drinking games and things like that are sort of designed to be really easy.
They're the best possible icebreakers, aren't they? It just makes it everyone gets a bit more open, everyone gets a bit looser. It's very much the easiest way to break the ice. And I think, in periods like Freshers Week and stuff like that where everyone's new, it makes a lot of sense. But then why does the trend continue,
I know, does it though? I'm interested actually. I think my intuition would be that it would go down a lot in second and third year versus first.
No, I guess it gets heavier.
Really? Do you think so?
Do you think so?
In my experience, it has been the opposite here.
So I think for me, on a sort of small scale friendship level, in terms of like our flat, we very rarely now, I'd say, get really, really drunk in the flat or whatever. Yeah. But I'd say in terms of socials and sports teams and that sort of thing, I'd say that people now know each other a bit more, so they're more willing to go on more socials, and it just gets a bit heavier, and people's tolerance goes up, and it just becomes a sort of, I don't know. I dislike it when people compare how much alcohol they can consume. I think that does irritate me.
Yeah, I think that's a bit stupid as well.
Yeah, but I think that as people sort of mature and it becomes less of a sort of new thing that you're experiencing for the first time, people stop caring about that kind of stuff. Yeah. I don't know, maybe that's just the case here, but from my experience, people at this point don't care anymore.
I would definitely say that was kind of the case for me. Like I've definitely, now that I sort of know my limits, so to speak, with alcohol as well, I would say that I drink less than I did in first year, maybe.
I think this is where Ewan shows that he's more mature than I
Well,
am.
I don't know if I'm saying... I don't think it's a maturing thing necessarily.
Oh, it is.
I think it is.
Okay, well...
I
Okay,
admit
well,
the fact that my immaturity leads to the drunken mistakes that I do, the mass consumption of alcohol that I take part in.
Yeah, because I know that, for example, like I will know exactly how much of a bottle of wine I need to drink to like be the right level of drunk, whatever that is. I kind of think like, oh, I don't want to get like this drunk that I throw up or this drunk that I lose control. So I'm very aware of like what my own limits are, and I would never go beyond them because I know that when I do go beyond them, it's not fun for me. I just die. So like I since knowing that I haven't ever really gone beyond those limits. So for like a year probably, and I find myself drinking a lot less now. Like I'll have like a beer with you guys like sort of like once or twice a week. But yeah, I definitely drink a lot less now, I'd say, and I'm pretty happy with that.
But do you do that very consciously, or is it just the case that it's less novel and you're not drinking for the sake of it, or are you actually actively saying, I'm at my limit now, I'm stopping?
It's a bit different with the circling that Matt was talking about, where you just sort of drink as much as you can in a certain amount of time. But in the general environment, in the general experience, there are times when I'll say like, I'm not having a drink today. Like, I'm just not drinking today. I will say that.
Yeah.
And I just won't be drinking.
No, I can commend Ewan for his sense of self-control.
Yeah, and also when I'm like having a bottle of wine, I will just stop and I'm like get about 3/4 down it, because I'll just be like, okay, I've had enough now. I'm just gonna put it away.
Yeah.
That's literally how it is with me.
Okay, so we've sort of described the situation now, and especially from our own perspectives. So I wanted to ask Matt, so do you think you saw the posters, it made you sort of realize, what is being actually defined as binge drinking, and that definitely applies to a lot of what you didn't think it would apply to, which is what is sort of pervasive and what everybody is doing. Do you think it's a big problem?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's damaging. I think it's damaging sort of the intimacy of university a little bit. I think, in the sense that I'm quite sentimental. I when I make friends, I make very good friends, and I look up to my parents a lot. And I look at my parents and I see that they have a set of about 10 or 15 really strong kind of long-term friends who they have been friends with from university, and I think this culture, so my dad is now 62 and my mum is in her 50s, and so they were never a part of this sort of heavy drinking culture when they were at university. I think the problem is now we are just sort of intimate social events where you get to know people really well, you make good friends, becoming less and less and less, and I think that's a real shame. And as a result, it's a bit of a problem.
So you're less worried about the sort of health effects, but more about the kind of social dynamic of it, and the different way that people socialize now as opposed to before, and how drinking is, one factor of that, or like a symptom.
I think people do get over the sort of brief alcoholism that is 3 years, maybe. Some people, unfortunately, don't. I think there are a fair few people who come out with liver damage or sort of a need to sort of maintain their social life with alcohol. But I think people do get over it. I think you look at the sort of generation before us who are all now sort of starting to get married or having children, that sort of thing, and they're not about that heavy drinking culture anymore. So I think it's more the less of the short-term impact and more of the long-term impact on people's lives, on sort of society as a whole and all that sort of thing.
So do you think it's easy do you think it'll be easy for our generation to leave it behind, the alcohol?
No, that's a good question.
Because are we different to the society the generation before us, or not?
Yeah, I'd say we were a little bit worse. I think there's no denying that. I think personally, yes, I will. I think I will be able to leave it behind because I know I have the social capabilities to function without it.
Yeah.
It will be a test of time. I have to say, I can't. I'm totally unconfident on that one.
Because I thought our generation was worse as well, but then I see the statistic that says binge drinking has come down. I don't know if that was, and the ONS is a very reputable source. Yeah. I'm surprised to see that, and I kind of think, well, if maybe our generation is better, or maybe our generation is there's fewer of us who are in this culture, but those of us who are worse in terms of perhaps they're more likely to have the long-lasting conditions, perhaps. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we generally try to view through the past in sort of rose-tinted glasses, where we think everybody was so civilized and they were having such deep conversations, over like a single glass of wine. But I don't think that's really how it was.
No,
Especially if you look at things like teen pregnancies as another example. Oh, the world is going under, like sex is becoming such a problem with people now. Actually, it used to be just as bad, and they didn't know about contraception as much. And I think it's sort of a parallel with the alcohol.
Yeah. And I reckon that's a really good example, because I think what makes us think it was better back in the day is just because things were suppressed. Like things like teen pregnancies would have been suppressed, they would have been kept under wraps, they would have been hidden because it was embarrassing, because it wasn't acceptable to talk about. And so nowadays, because we're more open about talking about these things, we actually see these problems for what they are, and we see them in the light.
Yeah.
And perhaps that enabled that, because that wasn't the case in the past, we can look at the past and say, oh, things are so much better in terms of these problems, but actually they probably weren't really.
Yeah, I think it's also that growth of social media, and there's lots of hideous photos of people like passed out in toilets. You're always laughing. He knows exactly which photo I was referring to. We won't be unkind in this situation.
Yeah.
But it's
not me, people. It's not me. I want to make that very clear.
It's not me either.
Yeah, it's neither of us.
But I think it's everything. I think is becoming more and more in the public eye. And I think it's a matter of whether as you say, it's being suppressed, or it's a matter of people just seeing it more for what it is now that everybody sees everything in this kind of Facebook state that we are in.
Lastly, one thing I wanted to ask about was, so you saw the posters being hung up, and there are obviously by the government, by universities, different initiatives to try to curb drinking at universities. You sent me an article which was about a university that had started offering alcohol-free accommodation to their students, for example, if they were, for religious reasons, opposed to alcohol, that sort of thing. And, there are campaigns as well. Do you think those are effective? Are they, necessary? Thoughts?
So one thing I hate, and I think is completely pointless, is the drink aware stuff. The stuff on the back of beer bottles and such like that just says, make sure you drink responsibly. Here's a website. I think that's serving zero purpose at the moment.
I don't know. Even if it's kind of stupid, and you look at it and it's like nobody cares. But it like every time you drink it, it's somehow reinforcing the fact that this is harmful in a way.
Yeah, like it's making you aware of it.
And that comes into the consciousness through some sort of diffusive process.
Yeah.
On the alcohol-free flat stuff, I found this interesting because I was just looking at, my instant reaction to this was, this is just segregation. Like, isn't this just sort of separating those who are drinking from those who aren't?
Good point. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, and isn't that bad? Like, you're basically saying, like, the people who want to drink can all hang out together and have fun, and the boring people can have their boring flats.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You have to assimilate, because I think also if your mate is teetotal, then you might think, all right, one night a week, I'll join you. And there was a conversation that went on in the Sailing Society, because it came out that one of the girls wasn't able to drink at the moment, and some of the girls said, all right, next social, we won't have a drink either, because if you can't have a drink, we might as well join you in solidarity, I guess. But yeah, I think you're right there. You have to be careful that you don't end up having two separate, because I think that highlights the issue.
That's two good points. Like, teetotal people can have a good influence on those who are drinking, and also segregating just means that you're just basically separating people who should be friends with each other. So and also because of the people who aren't drinking alcohol are often have some things in common. They are from certain religious backgrounds, or they have certain health issues, and by segregating them, you're segregating not just non-alcoholic people, but you're non-drinking people. You're segregating certain types of people. You're segregating certain people from certain religions as well.
You're not forcing them to be in the different accommodation.
No, it's not forced.
I think in a lot of cases they would prefer it that way.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily. If people want to be, you got to be careful, because people might want to be there because it's the easiest route. It's the path of least resistance. That's not necessarily the best option, even if they think it is. You got to look at it on a sort of slightly bigger picture. If they think, oh yeah, that's great, I can be with other people with from who are alcohol free, they may not necessarily consider the fact that they're having good influence on other people, or people who do drink aren't monsters.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Cool. All right. Anything else anyone wants to say on that, or are we all happy with that one?
I think we covered the basis there.
Yeah, I think that was good.
All right. Cool.
We were not ultimately confidently incorrect.
No.
I think we were quite
balanced on that, I think, actually. I realised we just jumped straight into that first topic when Matt said to me earlier he had some things to say about our last episode. So I before we move on to our second topic, I'd like to give I'll give him I'll give a short feedback interlude for Matt to I'll just get some burn cream or whatever I need to take the next 5 minutes here.
So I have to say, I listened to the beginnings of, I think, the initial episode or something like that, when you were deciding on your name. And I thought I should probably listen to the most recent one. So I had to listen to the episode which covered the 11 students who were suspended at Warwick University. And also the conversation about circumcision.
Yeah.
And I think you did a good job of discussing the Warwick 11, and I think that is still an evolving beast that is unpleasant, and I think there are a couple of things that we don't really know enough about to talk about just yet that are evolving about it, and I think there are people who've been excluded and etc. And if people want to find out more about that, I'm sure if they do a bit of digging online, there'll be an update somewhere. I should imagine it's not going to make it's not going to show up in the headline news in the BBC and that sort of thing again. I think it's past its sort of interest to the.
It's passed its way through the news cycle, hasn't it?
Yeah. So it'll just be small scale news sites reporting on that. But I wanted to. There was an interesting point that Ewan made about circumcision.
Uh-oh.
That I wanted to.
All right. Okay.
So your opinion is that circumcision should be made illegal. Male circumcision should be illegal. Is that
a very personal opinion I'd like to point out, and not something I plan on campaigning about or enforcing or even suggesting that happens. Just stating my own.
Stand by your beliefs, Ewan.
So, what's one thing you two perhaps didn't? Perhaps what you were aware of it, forgot to cover it, whatever.
Yeah.
There are people who get circumcised because they have to.
Yeah.
There are people who, for medical reasons, such that the foreskin isn't growing fast enough, it's causing infection.
Absolutely.
Has to be removed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So that can't be illegal.
Absolutely not. That's not the law. Sorry, just to the law I was suggesting was going to be would of course have had exceptions to it, like such as that, because obviously I am very well aware of the medical needs for people to be circumcised, obviously. But yeah, sorry, go
on. But what you got to factor in then is, right, if you remove any kind of religious circumcision, any through just choice or kind of preference, family, that sort of thing, like you're talking about the American sort of system where it's just the thing to do.
Yeah.
If you remove all of that, if someone gets into bed with you, you haven't got foreskin, that means that you had to have an operation because there was something medically wrong with you.
I see.
Sex is daunting, scary.
Yeah.
Sort of, I don't know what activity. Let's go with that. But it's particularly for the first time.
Yeah.
It is incredibly daunting.
Yeah.
Do you really want some poor bastard who hasn't got a foreskin to go, oh, no girl's going to want to touch this because it's really weird and nobody else is like this. You've got to be careful because you're then highlighting sort of it very very quickly becomes it's a medical reason.
But I mean that applies to every medical thing that is done to you, which is like visible, and nobody would ever say about any other thing, oh, we should have this done to everyone just so the people who don't look weird.
Yeah. I realise that, but there's a bit of a solution here.
Half and half, 50-50.
Yeah. When you're born, they flip a coin, heads or tails, and I just wanted to raise that because I thought,
sure,
You've got to be careful because.
But doesn't that already exist in the UK though? Like if you're circumcised in the UK, it means you're either from a certain religious background or you've had a medical condition.
But it's much.
Yeah, it'll still be like you'd have a lot of people who have it done still.
I suppose, yeah.
It's if something is more commonplace, it's less weird, it's less difficult for that person.
Yeah.
But I just
that is a very good point. To be fair, I think there's, and Max makes the counterpoint, which is the sort of example of this could be done to everyone. I agree with you that it's a very sensitive thing.
It's quite an intimate area.
Yeah, it's an intimate area. It's a unique thing. So I totally get that. I think my main issue with circumcision was around the consent part of it, and how it was non-consensual. It was the parents making a decision on the child. I always would like circumcision, if it has to happen in a context where it's a sort of more grown-up child making that decision, unless in that medical circumstance.
Is it more difficult when you're grown up as a procedure?
It's slightly less safe, but very, very minimal.
But also you have to go under. They have to put you under. You have to. You have to go into hospital. It's an operation.
Yeah.
Whereas for example, the Jewish circumcision is done to a baby.
There are kind of some weird things involved in that as well, aren't there?
Yeah, there's a burning and burying that I don't really understand. But it's done by the rabbi or whatever very quickly with a pair of scissors.
Yeah.
It's a 30-second event.
Yeah.
Whereas if you perhaps turn it into if you look at Christianity, baptism or communion, which can be done when a sort of child reaches 18 or whatever, when they find they can give consent themselves. In the Christian church, that's not difficult. That's just water over the head or whatever. If a Jewish boy wants to do it, he wants to respect his religion. He's got to go to hospital. You're asking more. Yeah, more. You're basically putting the NHS. You're gonna have to create a Jewish NHS, basically.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, and also I guess it would become quite daunting if it was like you had to people had to keep going undergoing this when it was they're older. I agree that doing it at a young age makes it less traumatic.
Actually, another question: does the NHS provide that service for free?
That is interesting. I don't know. That's it.
Because it seems like an unnecessary expenditure.
Interesting.
Because in America they were making loads of money out of it.
But I think that's a very interesting point by Max. Yeah. They
must do. If you need it for medical reasons, surely.
No, well, come on. I'm talking about for religious reasons.
There's only one way to find out.
That's something that's worth a Google another time. I think.
No, yeah, that's. I want to say yes, but yeah, I guess we'll have to find out. Follow up for next episode. I guess we'll get back to you on that one.
All right, Ewan, you first.
This is still
it's just going to become the circumcision podcast, isn't it? Oh. Jesus Christ.
We'll never live down the circumcision topic. It's going to revisit every single week.
Right, let's move on.
We want to move on to hip hop. Which is something very popular in the white male community.
It is.
Popular in every community. Maybe not yours. I don't know why.
You're speaking to novices here, I'm afraid, Max. But I have an appreciation for hip hop and rap, but I don't delve deeply into the genre.
Well, that's good. Hopefully, we'll get some inside opinions.
That's true.
From a hip hop fan and to non-fans. So exactly, I'll quickly introduce why this topic came to mind to me, and then some of the aspects I want to cover. So I first started this because in Germany we had a big scandal. It was a controversy that was caused by two rappers, very, very hugely successful, best-selling. I don't know if that's the right word for musicians, but very highly successful rappers who won a music award, which is like an annual big thing called the Echo. And that album included some pretty hard, borderline anti-Semitic punchlines. One of them was, I'll read the one, it's not that, but I think I can read it. It says...
We'll censor it, Max, don't worry.
Okay, translated, he's saying, my body is defined like that of a Auschwitz prisoner, Jesus. For example. Saying that, he's got like a well-toned body sort of thing. And obviously it's in bad taste. And this caused like a huge discussion because people sort of latched onto that line in particular. And in the aftermath, a bunch of people started to give back their awards, not accepting them in the first place.
Yeah.
The German justice minister actually weighed in saying they were repugnant and didn't deserve a prize. But had a sort of larger discussion based on anti-Semitism in German rap, because obviously it's like heavily dominated by immigrants who are often Muslim and come from places where you have a lot of stereotypes about Jews, but also the relationship between artistic freedom and what maybe is not okay to say.
So a lot to unpack here, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this like goes more broadly, I think, into, you know, provocative lines in music in general, what you can say that are sort of sexist and maybe misogynistic, like threats of violence and things like that, that you also get a lot more that isn't like as clear-cut as anti-Semitism, even in English music as well.
I think from an outside perspective, if you look at like, I was looking earlier, the top 10 highest selling rappers of, according to some terrible website, 8 of the 10 are Black Americans or Black African Americans, and I think there are a lot of I don't know. There's a lot of what would be considered could be considered racist terms, but I think that there's this whole thing of like owning the vocabulary and sort of claiming back the word, particularly the N-word in sort of black rap and that sort of thing. I think that is sort of not really what's coming. Not really the issue at the moment. I think that's one of the things that hip hop has going for it, in the sense that there isn't that sort of I guess racism. Would you agree? I realise that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I mean it is a culture that is dominated by Black Americans, and in some way I think white rappers probably have it a lot harder. But I'm sort of more worried about the kind of misogynistic stuff, because it's sort of something that actually, you know, I'm a big fan of the genre. I love listening to it, but every now and again I find myself sort of raising my ears a bit and thinking, oh, actually that's kind of harsh. And it also makes it kind of embarrassing for me to share my favorite music with other people, because like they listen to it and are like, oh, you know, this is kind of yeah, exactly. And I find that annoying, but at the same time, it is.
You can see people
I'm
cringing.
not going to sit here and say that
Yeah.
it's not something that maybe it sort of was one of the things that attracted me to the music in the first place.
So what is it that you like about hip hop then?
I think generally I like the beats and the production the most now. It sort of gets your head nodding kind of thing. But okay, I have here from the Misogyny in Rap Music, a Wikipedia article. Right in the sort of top header part of the article, it says that content analyses have found that approximately 22 to 37% of rap lyrics contain some misogyny, depending on subgenre. What do you think about that? It's like a quarter of rap lyrics.
It's crazy.
I think there's a lot of like lad. The thing is, it's the lad culture doesn't seem to go. You guys were discussing it last time about that, this sort of lad and culture and that sort of thing. I think it doesn't really cross the pond to America in the same way. But there's very much this sort of a sense of. I think it comes across as a sense of ownership a lot of the time. Particularly you watch the music videos and that sort of thing. And I think there is this, and like someone was saying a few years ago that there's this, quite often it's male angry rapper sort of giving sort of hard hitting lines, and then the rest of the song is made up by a chorus or a set of lyrics by a female vocalist, which is all sort of quite soft and melodic and that sort of thing. I think a big one is Love the Way You Lie by Eminem and Rihanna.
Yeah, Eminem does this a lot, yeah. That's the first thing I thought of.
It's certainly not female empowerment, for sure.
Well, I mean, how about something even more clear? How about like any rap video ever, like a music video, where you have like literally just like, let's say 2 or 3 guys in the foreground rapping with their chains on or whatever, and then like 80 girls in the background who are like strippers who they're throwing money on to.
It's just
it does sort of. I don't quite understand how in the society we live in today there is billions of pounds being poured into this industry, funding these sorts of videos, and people are going, let's put it on Radio 1, let's MTV, let's put it on like prime time
and then
television.
they censor the N-word, but then everything else is still like really graphic and like extremely vivid imagery. And I find that very strange because we're so worried nowadays, trying to, make things a bit more fair to everyone, and, being quite sort of active in being aware of the kind of stereotypes we're enforcing and everything. But then, like, rap music is really, really popular amongst young people who are the most aware. How do you match those things? I mean, how do I match those things? I
think it does seem mad that in this sort of era where you have to be so careful with what you say, how you describe someone, or how you operate, that in terms of search, that there isn't just this discrimination, misogyny, all that sort of thing. Yeah, rap music on a regular basis gets away with sort of those. I think it was what's that song that you showed me by the weekend?
Oh no, I was going to talk about that.
A disgusting song.
Yeah, it's truly disgusting, and I think what I would say to answer that question, Matt, is it artistic license? Is it this is part of the format, like we're doing rap, this is how it is, this is how it's supposed to be, and it's part of the format. It's not serious, maybe, but I don't know if that's the real reason or not.
The problem is, I think, regardless of what the producer or the artist is trying to come across with, it's the mentality that enforces. It's the images,
exactly, yeah.
It's the images. It's the kind of the way in which these sort of millionaires, billionaires act, even if not off camera, on camera. I think it doesn't set a great example. And I realise I sound like such an old man when I say that. But yeah, I appreciate the thing is the music is good, and people clearly enjoy it. So why? It does seem a juxtaposition, and it seems a sort of difficult one to tackle, really.
So on the Wikipedia page, this is the hip hop Wikipedia page, which will be in the show notes. And at the bottom of that page, it talks about the 6 elements of the hip hop movement. So the hip hop movement originated in the Bronx in the 1970s, and the sort of 6 elements are consciousness, awareness, civil rights awareness, activism awareness, justice, political awareness, community awareness, and music. And this really doesn't seem to match up with the hip hop today. And I was wondering, Max, if you thought, has hip hop changed a lot since those sort of early times, all those years ago, and how, in what ways do you think it's changed, and has it sort of lost its connections to the civil rights movement and that sort of whole thing?
I mean, I am definitely not qualified to talk about this. I'm more of a very contemporary hip hop, I would say.
Right. But okay.
Even now, one thing I can say about how it is now, that it's a huge genre, and there are loads of subgenres which, to varying degrees, are talking about social issues versus gangster rap, which is like the most popular one right now, I would say. So I don't think you can generalize it that much, but I think I was talking in particular about a sort of gangster rap subgenre, which is also the most popular one, I think. Now, if you look at the most famous rappers now, I think maybe except for Kanye West to some extent is quite political. But I think that if you do you know the Migos? Yes, no?
No.
Well, that would be the complete opposite.
Right. Okay.
So it depends.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I personally dislike grime as a music genre. It really doesn't appeal to me, but it is something that, as I'm reading from the first couple of lines of Wikipedia here, it draws on hip hop a lot, and it's sort of it's kind of raw rap. And it has given a lot of British, particularly Londoners a voice that sort of allows them to speak out and really just let loose on what they want to talk about and let the sort of world know about the social injustices they're facing. I think from that point of view, that is taking hip hop back to its core roots of actually spreading a message. And I think going back to your question to Max about how's it changed, I think it still is facilitating that sort of its purpose being to spread a message of sort of not positivity, but certainly to try and enact some form of change.
Yeah, because we've got to remember that this music comes from a sort of minority group that's been oppressed and attacked for centuries, and so like it's very important to have their views expressed, and this is the format. This is a format they've been able to popularize as well, which is important because if it's popularized, it gets attention. So maybe this gangster rap isn't ideal, but it gets attention, right? It gets views, it gets listened to. So what's more important? Is it the integrity of it, or is it being heard?
No, but in a way, it's actually reinforcing like bad stereotypes.
That's true.
Black people as well.
Yeah.
Maybe one last thing that I wanted to ask about. Like, why is it that I think both of you probably would agree that when there is like violence in media, in video games, and there's a bit of like an outcry over it, we sort of scoff at that and think, this is stupid. But then how come we make that differentiation when we're talking about things like misogyny in rap versus just talk of, dealing drugs and violence in rap or in music in anything?
Yeah, I see what you mean, as in sort of we get so worked up about sort of, things like, I was looking at an article about, do you remember Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke?
Yeah, that was
a real, that caused a real sort of disruption in the media about sort of, it doesn't always mean no was what people thought the lyrics were sort of implying and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it was banned on a couple of college university campuses in the US even.
20 universities, including Edinburgh, Plymouth, Leeds, UCL, and a number of colleges in Oxford and Durham. So it had a big effect because people were not okay with it. But I see what you mean in the sense that everybody seems to get very worked up about this, but they're quite happy for like Snoop Dogg or whatever to trivialise drugs and alcohol and all that sort of thing. And people don't seem to batter an eyelid at that. And do we need to also look at that as being,
or do we need to look at neither? Because I think the like reason how people can just ignore like all of the references to like the drug dealing is the same reason why people can just ignore all of the references to pimping in the same song.
The thing is, Max, I feel like the references to the misogynistic stuff, I don't know if this is just me personally, but when I hear it, it really shocks me. Like, it just is really painful to hear. Like, it's just kind of, it always wakes me up whenever I hear it. I'm like, whoa, is he really saying that? Like, it's somehow more abhorrent in a way. I can't really explain why that is, but it just sounds more abhorrent. I don't know if you have that same experience when you're listening to it.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't care at all about all of the references to violence, but the other stuff every now and again does come up.
Is it like the normalization of it, perhaps, that we're so used to rappers talking about drugs and stuff like that we're just like, yeah, whatever? Is that what it is?
I think it's just because of the general sort of cultural awareness around sexism now that we have versus like violence, which I don't know about you, but I feel like in the UK is like non-existent. But it's like one of those things where like you could say, oh, there's no message in this song. Like, don't overcomplicate things. Which was also the excuse, by the way, that the two rappers I mentioned at the beginning was to say, oh, this is just, we're just trying to make like, it's just lyrics, we're just trying to make like a funny comparison that is like sort of referring to how well toned my body is. Like, don't say that I'm anti-Semitic for this reason, but it's not that simple. All
right. Well, I'd just like to say thank you to Matt for joining us today. That made it much more interesting, I think, when we talked about. It also gave us a different perspective, particularly on stuff we already talked about. It helped certainly widen my eyes a bit as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It's been Real pleasure.
And if any one of you is listening and is interested in joining us like Matt has today, you're more than welcome to. Just let me or Max know, and we'll try and get you a spot on the podcast. So yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.